G'day guys, timer is on, happy running. Coming in today with another episode on the recovery theme. I've had a few more people join the Facebook group, the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group, and some more votes going in recovery methods. So I did the overview yesterday, and I thought it'd be a good chance to dive into some, particularly sleep today, to get some really actionable practical things that you can do to start optimizing your sleep, because as I said yesterday, it's stress plus rest equals adaptation. So stimulus plus recovery equals adaptation, and that sleep is the biggest pillar of recovery you can get. If you haven't joined the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group already, do join us. It's a place where you can ask specific questions or vote on topics that you'd like. I post these podcasts up as videos there as well. And if you do, you can see I've just done a clean shave of my face for the first time in months, and I feel like I look like a small child. So you can see that if you join the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group. Not the biggest reason to do it, but I will be getting around to putting some resources together, like a strength program and some of the a recovery hierarchy as I talked about yesterday. And the more people in there who show enthusiasm for that, then the higher up my priority list I will make it. So today, as I said, I'm talking about sleep and going to do a bit of a deeper dive into that. So I think the best way to think about sleep is trying to go for two big categories. So one is, how can you get your body clock, so your circadian rhythm is the name for your body clock, to basically be on the time schedule that you want to be on. So ideally, we're getting up, we're feeling energetic in the morning, and then getting nice and sleepy when we need to, as at a reasonable time of day. So I think that's kind of the first one, is going to be looking at how can we get that circadian rhythm right, so you're kind of getting all the right signals the right time of the day to then actually be able to fall asleep. Because I know a big problem for people is they have every intention to be able to fall asleep, but it comes around to, not 10, 11, 12, and still just not tired. And then you wake up in the morning just feeling absolutely cooked, and it's hard to get out of bed. So how can we get the right signals at the right time to really make that easier? And then there's going to be the factors of looking at this, like sleep hygiene is kind of the term that's now used for it, of basically optimizing your sleep environment so that you get the best quality sleep. So part of that getting good quality sleep is going to be the timing factors. So it all kind of plays into it. So sleep's a really, as I said, the biggest, most important recovery factor you can get. Humans can go a long time without food, a bit less time without water. But if you make a human not sleep for really like just a relatively short amount of time, like animals just die with sleep deprivation. It's a really key part of keeping the all the biological systems up and running. So it's just again to highlight the importance. So with sleep circadian rhythms, one of the strongest signals is light, and that might seem really kind of obvious, but also I think people really underestimate just how powerful that is. So light in the beginning of the day, trying to get as much natural light as possible early on in the day, pretty much as soon as you wake up, is going to be a really strong signal to your brain to basically set in motion a bunch of processes, like a spike in the stress hormone cortisol, which I know people have heard about stress hormones and cortisol and thinking like, oh, you want to try and limit that as much as possible. But it's a really important and natural part of the body clock, the circadian rhythm, to have a high amount of cortisol in the morning, which then tapers off throughout the day. So getting up, getting as much sunlight or direct light as you possibly can early on in the day is a really good idea. Now, I know that's quite hard depending on what time of day you have to get to work and where in the world you are at the moment. The sun comes up quite late in Sydney, Australia, compared to, I guess, what I've been used to. So it's not getting light until, nearly 7 o'clock. So if you're waking up at, 5:30 to go to work, that might be a bit hard. So even just getting overhead strong lights is good, but there's I'm not going to go into the specific details, but basically getting exposure to sunlight is best. So as soon as you can, and even having kind of glass in between you and the sunlight actually does diminish a lot of the benefits. I know that sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's true. So get outside uninterrupted exposure to sunlight as early as possible. And it's just quite a nice way of, and when you sort of realize how key this is to setting yourself up for kind of long-term success, it becomes quite a nice morning ritual of basically like it's a good reason to jump out of bed and not just, I don't know, I think like people think like, oh, light, I could just look at my phone first thing in the morning, get the, all the blue light from there. But there's so much benefit to getting up, getting that sunlight early, and making that a real like good initial part of your day. So at the same token, light at the end of the day becomes really important. So if you've ever gone camping out in the wilderness, you probably will have had the experience of, like, unless you're out there for a party in the wild, that you have your dinner, you have your have a little campfire, and then everyone's kind of looks at their watches at about 8 p.m, 8:30 p.m, and like, why are we like feel so late? Like, how can it possibly be this early when it feels like I'm ready for bed? And it's that signal of basically when you don't have all this external lighting around you, it sends really strong signal to the parts of your brain that control that body clock, and also being outside while sunset is happening. Like, there's receptors in your eyes that actually, when they get signal of light coming from low on the horizon, so like a sunset, particularly with like a low amount of blue light in it, so more of that kind of reddy sunset, that actually does play a role in this sort of time signaling pathways. So that's why, when you're outside, you're camping, and then you might have like a campfire on the floor, so you've got this like low red light. It's actually a really strong signal to make you sleepy and to really wind your whole system down. So I know that we can't all just go into the wild and get to bed early like that, but you can take the learnings from that and basically trying to actually be there for being outside and viewing sunset can actually be quite a, it's a really lovely thing to do if you can make it if you can manage it. But also it does start to signal that those parts of your brain that do control this circadian rhythm. So doing that, and then trying to, after dark, making your environment basically as sort of low light as is safe and as you can manage it. So you can see around me, if you're watching online, there's got lamps there, lamps there. We've got a whole bunch of lamps, ideally like kind of fairly low to the ground as well, so that in the evening, instead of having on the big sort of fluorescent-y style lights above, really trying to just keep them quite low, because that does signal to your body to just start winding down. And and again, trying to avoid like really bright screens that are right in front of your face. And that's not always practical, because I'm so busy with a bunch of different businesses, and but using the blue light filters on the screen is a nice idea of and turning the dimness right down before going to bed is a great way of doing that. And most things, like, they're pretty automated with that these days, most computers and mobile. So that's definitely something that you can do. Light is a really interesting topic. It's something that I think it's really coming into vogue now. The Huberman Lab podcast is a fantastic neuroscience podcast where he's really into the light side of things, and that's where I learned a lot of this from. So if you would like to do a really deep dive into it, I'd definitely recommend his episodes, particularly the first 4 episodes of his podcast, where he talks about optimizing sleep, and he goes into he does sort of like an hour and a half per episode, and I'm trying to keep these really succinct and actionable. But if you do really want to know more, then that's a great way of doing it. And otherwise, one of the big factors that also signals throughout like timing in your day is eating. So trying to get a decent amount of food in early in the day, and then kind of tapering off towards the evening, and so not having a really big meal before you go to sleep, because that can basically just be less ideal for that kind of wind down, like your system is sort of working on overdrive to try and process this food. So there's the timer. That's 10 minutes done already. But yeah, so the basic takeaways are trying to get as much light exposure as possible early in the day, and then really start to diminish it. And there is value in watching the sunset, so treat yourself. And then trying to eat early and not have a huge meal just before you go to sleep, which I always make that mistake because I love dinner. It's my favorite meal. And often, when you're busy with work, cooking late, it's easy to accidentally do that. So those are the kind of big two for setting the body clock. And I'll be going into sort of more of the sleep hygiene side of things tomorrow. So hopefully that is helpful. And yeah, I know there's lots of different circumstances where, shift work really can make the light thing quite challenging. Like my partner's a doctor, and all our friends in the hospital, like they're working under fluorescent lights overnight. And there's just nothing you can do about the lighting system in a hospital. You can't just go, excuse me, turn off the lights so I can keep my circadian rhythm. So I know that every situation is different, and in the Human Lab podcast, he does actually have a episode specifically about people who do shift work. So it could be, if that is your situation, it's a worthwhile couple of hours to sit through and listen to his tactics around that. And also for travel, so basically crossing, like for jet lag as well, he does talk about how to manage that. And with the food, I know everyone has sort of different food habits or different, diet programs they follow. I've done a lot of intermittent fasting in the past, or time restricted eating. So basically not eating till midday. And that, is a totally fine way of, I really feel quite good when I do that. But yeah, when you're looking at sort of like that has lots of benefits in certain directions. And then it does make this sort of circadian rhythm thing slightly less optimal. But again, there's no perfect way that's going to suit everyone at all times. So if sleep is a real challenge for you and you haven't, tried that before, then it could be worth playing with. But again, remember, this isn't medical advice, and please just use this as a curiosity sparker to do to work with health professionals specifically. If you did want to work with me as a physiotherapist online, you could jump across to the Facebook group and send me a message. And otherwise, jump on there, leave a question, and just let me know which episodes. I've put a little Q&A question up there saying like which of the episodes have you got the most out of, which ones have you liked, and what would you like to see more of. So really trying to make this as valuable and as helpful as possible. So jump on there and let me know. And otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow to talk more about the sleep hygiene side of things. If you are, again, getting value out of what I'm doing, I've got my Solana wallet address on the descriptions. And so any donations of GST or GMT or Solana would be very, very welcome. All right. Hopefully that's been helpful, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.